He mining station hung in silence above the dark gas giant, a lonely outpost floating in the endless black. Crew rotations had ended hours ago, and most of the corridors were dim, lit only by pale blue strips along the floor. The human, Daniel Cross, sat alone in the common lounge, leaning back in a battered chair with an ancient piece of tech on the table before him. It was a cassette player, scratched, dented, and held together by two different types of tape. It looked like it had no business surviving in the 25th century, yet it still worked. In the hush of the station's night cycle, he slid a cassette into the slot and pressed play. The first distorted guitar riff exploded into the empty room. The sound filled the space with raw power, the kind of music that didn't care about neatness or rules. Daniel smirked and closed his eyes. The guitar growled, the drums thundered, and the singer's voice, sharp and wild, carried that same rebellion humans once lived by. That was when the door slid open. She stepped in. Tall, lean, and wrapped in the soft gray robes of her species. Liara was nothing like the gruff miners or tired traders that usually pass through here. Her skin shimmered faintly, a pale silver that caught the light. And her eyes, wide and bright, with a shifting violet hue, locked instantly on the source of the sound. Daniel didn't notice her at first. Not until the song hit the chorus. And a shadow moved across his table. "What is that?" Lyra's voice was sharp, almost demanding. Daniel opened one eye. Music? Her head tilted slightly, the way her species did when confused. "No, not music. I have heard music. The trade halls play it to calm disputes. The training domes use it to regulate breathing. But this," she gestured sharply at the cassette player. "This is something else." Daniel grinned. "It's called rock. From the 1980s, back on Earth." Her gaze lingered on the little machine as if it might explode. "It feels wrong, dangerous." "That's the point," Daniel said, leaning forward and turning the volume up. The next riff hit, loud and unrestrained. Liara flinched, but didn't step back. Her pupils widened, and for a moment she stood completely still, as if something inside her was listening harder than her ears could manage. Then she sat down across from him. "Play it again," she said the second time. She didn't just listen. She stared at Daniel's hands, tapping the table in rhythm. The beat was steady, yet wild enough to make her shift in her seat. She felt her heart quicken, an involuntary reaction, her species, usually reserved for combat drills or extreme physical exertion. "This is unbalanced," she muttered. "That's because it's supposed to be," Daniel replied. Back then, people didn't always want balance. They wanted to feel alive. Her fingers twitched slightly against the table. "It makes me want to move. To fight something." Daniel chuckled. "Or dance." Liara shot him a look. "This is not a dance rhythm. Can be whatever you want it to be," Daniel said. "That's why we loved it." But then the station's lights flickered. Liara froze, head snapping, toward the corridor. That was not a normal power fluctuation. Daniel frowned. The mining station's old wiring glitched sometimes, but the tremor in the air after the flicker was new. He stood, turning off the cassette player. "Stay here." She stood too. "Your sound device, it does something to the air. I could feel it." "That's just bass," Daniel said. But his voice lacked confidence. They both heard it, a faint tapping echoing from the far hall. Not footsteps, not mechanical clicking. Something slower, intentional. Daniel reached under the table, pulling out a worn utility wrench. Lyra's hand went to the narrow blade hidden under her robes. The tapping stopped. They waited. The silence grew heavier, as though the station itself was holding its breath. Then a voice, faint and broken through the speaker's cross. "You there?" It was the security chief's voice, but laced with static and panic. "Daniel, Press the wall intercom. I'm here. What's going on? Something's in the maintenance ring. Moving fast. Not showing on scanners, the rest dissolved into static. Lyra's hand tightened on her blade. We should move. Daniel nodded once. Follow me. They moved quickly down the narrow corridor, the emergency lights casting sharp red stripes. Across the walls, Daniel kept the wrench raised, listening for anything out of place. Lyra moved like a shadow beside him, silent and alert as they reached the first hatch. A faint sound rose behind them. Music. Daniel stopped dead. He hadn't turned the cassette player back on, but the same song, echoed faintly through the hallway, distorted and warped like it was being played underwater. Lyra's eyes widened. Your rock. It is following us. Daniel shook his head. That's impossible. The player's off. Yet the guitar riff grew louder, crawling along the walls, the notes bending in unnatural ways. The hatch ahead of them slammed shut. What is this? Lyra demanded. I don't know, Daniel said, though a cold suspicion was forming in the back of his mind. That cassette had been through a lot, stolen from ruins, sold on black markets, passed through hands that whispered about old earth frequencies and songs that wake things. A thud shook the floor beneath them. Daniel grabbed the manual override on the hatch, pulling hard. Lyra slipped through first, her blade ready. They found themselves in a dim cargo bay. The air colder here. The sound followed, the chorus now twisting into something almost live. Then they saw it. A figure stood in the far corner, half in shadow. It was humanoid, but its limbs were too long. Its head tilted unnaturally, as if listening to a distant sound. It was swaying not to any rhythm Daniel recognized, but to the warped echo of the song. Lyra hissed something in her own language. Daniel tightened his grip on the wrench. That's not a crew member. The figure's head snapped toward them. The music cut off instantly. For a moment, no one moved. Then the figure stepped forward into the light. Its face, if it could be called that, was smooth, featureless, metal, as though it had been sculpted without eyes or a mouth. Its body was wrapped in tattered fragments of station uniforms, and its fingers ended in long, thin points. Daniel Cross, it said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere. At once, Lyra shifted her stance. You know it. I've never seen it before in my life, Daniel said, though his tone betrayed doubt. The figure took another step. The song is not yours. Daniel glanced at Lyra. We need to go, now. But before they could move, the figure lunged faster than either expected. Lyra moved first, her blade flashing. Daniel swung the wrench. The impact sent a shock up his arm, like hitting solid steel. The figure staggered back, but not far enough. The music returned, not from the cassette, but from somewhere inside the figure itself. Louder now, filling the cargo bay with a distorted roar of guitar and drums. Lyra shouted over the noise, It's using your sound. Daniel's mind raced. Then we kill the sound. He dropped the wrench and pulled the battered cassette player from his jacket pocket. He'd taken it with him without thinking. He slammed the stop button. The music didn't stop. The figure tilted its head, the sound pouring out like it was part of its being. Lyra's eyes were wide. It is not playing. It is remembering. Daniel had no time to respond. The figure lunged again, its movements sharper, faster. He grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the maintenance hatch on the far wall. They barely made it through, slamming the manual lock behind them. Lyra was breathing fast. That thing. It reacts to your earth sound. It feeds on it. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we make sure it doesn't hear it again. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Because deep in his pocket, the cassette was warm. And faintly, so faintly, it was still playing. The hatch door rattled once, then fell silent. Daniel and Liara stood frozen in the narrow maintenance tunnel, the cold metal walls closing in around them. The only light came from a flickering strip above, making shadows crawl along the curved. Bulkhead Daniel reached into his pocket, feeling the cassette player. The warmth was still there, faint but unnatural. He pulled it out slowly, holding it in his palm. "It's still active," Liara said, her voice low. "It's off," Daniel replied. "No batteries should even be in it. I took them out months ago." Liara's eyes narrowed. "Then how is it a sharp metallic clang echoed from the other end of the tunnel. They both turned. Something scraped along the wall, deliberate, steady, as if marking its path. Daniel shoved the cassette player into his jacket and motioned for Liara to move. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to walk single file, Daniel in front. The sound followed, keeping perfect distance. Liara's voice was tense. "It's tracking us," through the sound. "Your Earth relic is calling it?" Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then we need to shut it up." They reached a vertical ladder leading to a service platform. Daniel climbed first, pulling himself up into the dim chamber above. Liara followed silently, her blade still in her grip. The platform overlooked one of the station's main reactor conduits, a massive column of glowing coolant pipes, their hum filling the air. Daniel crouched by an old access panel and started pulling it open. "What are you doing?" Liara asked. "Trying to fry whatever's making this thing run without power?" Daniel muttered. "If I can overload its internal circuit," a low, distorted guitar chord rolled through the chamber, cutting him off. It wasn't from the player. It came from somewhere below. Liara stepped to the railing, peering down into the maze of pipes. Her eyes widened. "It's here." Daniel looked and saw the figure climbing the coolant, piping like a spider, its long limbs moving with unnatural precision. Each movement made the music swell louder, like it was climbing toward them through sound as much as space. "Move." Daniel yanked Liara toward the far door. They ran along the platform, the metal grating ringing under their boots. The music followed, twisting into an ugly, almost mocking version of the 80s rock riff. It made Daniel's chest tighten, as if the song itself had been turned against him. The far door was locked. Daniel slammed his hand against the manual override, but it didn't budge. Behind them, the scraping of metal fingers drew closer. "Daniel," Liara said sharply, "if it feeds on your sound, give it too much." He turned to her. "What?" Her eyes were fierce. "You said this music is wild, dangerous. Then make it so dangerous it hurts." Daniel hesitated only a moment before pulling the cassette player out again. He jammed the cassette forward, forcing the play mechanism to lock. The song blasted out, raw and unfiltered, the guitar screaming, the drums hitting like hammer blows. The figure froze mid-climb, its head tilted, twitching. As the sound surged, Daniel turned the volume to maximum. The air seemed to thicken, the vibration crawling through the platform. Liara gritted her teeth, gripping the railing as the sound pushed against her senses. The figure convulsed, metal limbs jerking violently. It let out a sound not human, not machine, a fractured burst of static and feedback. Then it dropped. The thing slammed into the lower deck, hitting hard enough to bend metal. Sparks showered from the coolant pipes. Daniel shut the cassette player off instantly. The chamber went silent except for the hum of the coolant system. Liara was breathing hard. "Did we kill it?" Daniel looked down. The figure was gone. His stomach sank. "No, we just made it mad." Before they could move, the station's alarms blared. A deep, warning tone shook the walls, and the overhead lights switched to flashing. Red. The station's automated voice followed. "Warning. Outer hull breach detected in Section 7. Daniel cursed. That's the maintenance ring. Lyra's grip tightened on her blade. It's trying to get out, or let something in. They ran for the nearest lift, the alarms echoing in the narrow corridors. Daniel's thoughts kept circling back to the cassette. This wasn't just a machine. Whatever that thing was, it had heard his music, and something in it had answered. The lift shuddered to a stop halfway to the main deck. Lights flickered, then died completely in the darkness. The music returned, not the warped alien version, the original, crisp, powerful, exactly as it was meant to be, and this time, it wasn't coming from the player in his pocket. It was everywhere. The lift hung motionless in the shaft, the weightless hum of silence pressing in on them. Then the first chords hit. Not from Daniel's pocket, not from any device, but from the walls themselves. The steel vibrated under his hand in time with the drums. The guitar roared, perfectly clear, yet impossibly loud for a sound with no source. Liara pressed her palms to her temples. "But it's inside my head," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, it's in the whole station." The red emergency lights strobed, syncing with the beat as if the station itself had taken the song into its veins. Every flash made Leora's violet eyes flare, reflecting the light like a predator's. Daniel yanked open the emergency hatch in the lift's ceiling. "We climb." Now they hauled themselves up the ladder into the service duct. The music still, rumbling through the metal like a living thing. Lyra's breathing quickened as they crawled. "Daniel, there is something wrong." "My heart, it's matching the beat. Every muscle feels ready to strike." "That's adrenaline," Daniel said, trying to steady his voice. "Humans get it when music hits hard. But for you, it feels like a weapon," she said flatly. "Like I could cut through a bulkhead with my bare hands." Daniel looked over his shoulder. "Then maybe that's exactly what we'll need." The duct opened into an observation bay. The giant windows stretched from floor to ceiling, giving them a clear view of the gas giant below and the black beyond. But the view wasn't what stopped them. 3 other crew members were there. Or what was left of them. They stood motionless, facing the window, their bodies swaying ever so slightly in time with the music. Their eyes were unfocused, mouths slightly open, as if lost in some unseen trance. "Crew," Daniel called, stepping forward. They didn't turn. Lyra's blade was in her hand instantly. "Daniel, their minds are gone." He took another step. "We're trapped." One of the crew twitched, their head jerking toward him like a puppet. The voice that came out wasn't theirs. It was the same distorted tone the figure in the cargo bay had used. "You brought the song. We remember." Daniel's skin crawled. "Who's we?" The crew member's lips curled into a faint, unnatural smile. "The ones left in the metal. The ones you woke." The other 2 crew members turned in unison, their movements unnervingly. Slowly Liara stepped between Daniel and them. "You will release them. Now they do not wish to be released," the voice said. "They wish to hear." The deck vibrated harder, the music intensifying, the guitar solos spiraling into a chaotic wail. Liara staggered, pressing a hand to the wall as if it were pulling something from her. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Stay with me." Her eyes snapped to him, and for a moment they were brighter, sharper, almost feral. "If I stay, I will kill them," she said, her voice low. Daniel looked at the 3 swaying figures. "Then we run." They darted for the side exit, but the door slammed shut before they reached it. The crew moved toward them, still swaying, but now with deliberate, heavy steps. Daniel pulled the cassette player from his pocket. It was cold now, but the tape inside spun on its own. No power, No motor, just turning. He took a gamble and hit rewind. The music in the room faltered, the beat stuttering like a skipped heartbeat. The crew members froze mid-step. Leora's gaze locked on him. "You can control it." "Barely," Daniel said. He hit play again, but this time it wasn't the song that came out. It was a single, high-pitched tone that sliced through the air like a blade. The crew members clutched their heads and dropped to their knees. "Move," Daniel shouted. They shoved the side door open and slipped into a narrow maintenance hall. The moment they left the observation bay, the tone stopped, replaced by the faint echo of the original song somewhere far behind them. Liara exhaled sharply. That sound hurt them, not just in their heads, in their bodies. Daniel nodded. If this music really is affecting the station and the people in it, then maybe we can fight it with itself. Her eyes narrowed. Or it fights back harder. The station shuddered suddenly, as if something massive had slammed into its outer hull. Warning sirens wailed over the music, and a mechanical voice repeated, "Warning, external breach detected. Docking arm compromised." Lyra's grip tightened on her blade. "It is letting something in." Daniel looked at her, then at the cassette player. Then whatever's coming. Already heard the song. They ran toward the docking arm. The music swelling again, louder than before. And this time, it wasn't just coming from the station. It was coming from outside. The docking arm loomed ahead, a long metal spine jutting from the station's side. Red warning lights strobed along its length, bathing the corridor in flashes of crimson. Through the narrow viewports, Daniel caught glimpses of the black void, outside and something moving against it. At first, it looked like debris drifting in the gas giant's orbit. But then the shapes shifted, clinging to the hull like insects. They were too precise, too deliberate to be random fragments. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They are not ships, they are climbing. Daniel's stomach tightened. Boarding pods, her head tilted in that alien way of hers. Pods do not have claws. The first impact rattled the docking arm. The metal groaned, and Daniel felt the vibration in his bones. Somewhere beyond the bulkhead, the faint sound of the 80s rock riff pulsed, warped by the vacuum and the distance. "They've heard it," Daniel muttered. "They're coming for it." Liara gripped her blade tighter. "Then we make sure they regret stepping inside." Daniel checked the nearest emergency locker, pulling out a heavy mining cutter. Its barrel glowed faintly from stored charge, not meant for combat. But it would cut through metal if needed. A violent clang echoed through the corridor as a section of the outer hull gave way. The first intruder pulled itself inside. It was humanoid in shape, but built from segmented black plating, each joint moving with insect-like precision. Its head had no eyes, only a flat surface that vibrated faintly in time with the music. Long, hooked fingers scraped the floor as it stepped forward. Behind it, more shapes dropped from the breach, their bodies clicking and shifting like they were part machine, part something else. Liara stepped forward before Daniel could stop her. "You will not take him," she said in her native tongue, a sound sharp enough to cut air. The lead creature tilted its head at her voice. Then, in perfect unison, all of them began to hum the guitar riff. The sound hit like a pressure wave. Daniel staggered, his chest tightening, his heartbeat sinking unwillingly with the rhythm. Liara dropped to one knee, gripping the deck plating so hard her claws dug grooves into the metal. Daniel fumbled for the cassette player. He hit rewind again. The high-pitched tone from before sliced through the air, disrupting the hum. The intruders jerked back, movements spasming as the tone burned into them. One collapsed completely, its limbs locking rigid. "Move," Daniel shouted, pulling Liara toward the breach. She didn't resist, but her eyes were different now, brighter, wilder. The music's pulse hadn't left her. They stepped through the torn hull into the docking arm's breach point. The gas giant's swirling clouds filled the view through the cracked observation panels, glowing faintly from lightning deep within the atmosphere. The wind of escaping air tugged at them until the emergency seals kicked in. More figures climbed. Along the outside, their movements sure and purposeful. They weren't random raiders. They were following something, hunting it, and Daniel realized, with a cold twist in his gut, that it wasn't the cassette player, it was him. "Why are they after me?" Loud, though he didn't expect an answer. Liara, still breathing hard, said, "Because you are the source. The song is inside you now. I can feel it." Daniel stared at her. "Inside me." She stepped closer, the flicker of red light painting her silver skin in shadows. "Your music, it moves through metal, air, and flesh. It has touched you. That is why they will not stop." Before Daniel could respond, the outer hatch buckled inward. One of the creatures forced its way through, shards of metal spraying across the deck. It moved faster than the others, its limbs unfolding into longer, blade-like shapes. Daniel raised the mining cutter. "Stay behind me." Liara ignored him and moved in low, striking at the creature's legs. Her blade screeched against the armor, but cut deep enough to make it stumble. Daniel fired, the mining cutter's beam slicing a molten line through its chest. The thing convulsed, sparks spilling from the wound. Then it let out a single, distorted guitar note before collapsing. The others outside began moving faster. Daniel grabbed Leora's arm. "We can't fight them all. We need to get to the core. If the station systems are carrying the song, maybe we can cut it off there." Leora's expression was unreadable, but she nodded. "The core will be guarded. Then we fight our way in," Daniel said. The two of them turned and sprinted down the docking arm, the pounding footsteps of the intruders echoing behind them, perfectly in time with the unstoppable beat of the song. The closer they got to the station's core, the stronger the music became. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was pressure, pulsing through the walls, vibrating the deck under their boots. Every thundering beat of the drum felt like it was pushing Daniel forward and holding him back at the same time. Liara moved differently now. Her usual graceful caution was gone, replaced by a sharp, almost predatory stride. Her eyes glowed faintly with each guitar strike, her breathing syncing perfectly with the rhythm. Daniel kept glancing at her. "You holding up?" She turned her head slowly, a small, sharp smile curling her lips. "I am more than holding up, human. I feel alive." That tone in her voice made Daniel's skin prickle. They rounded a corner and froze. The corridor ahead was blocked, not by debris, but by more of the black-plated intruders. At least a dozen of them stood shoulder to shoulder, unmoving, as if waiting for some signal. One stepped forward. It wasn't like the others. Its plating was smoother, its limbs proportioned closer to human, and across its chest, etched deep into the metal, was the waveform of a song. Daniel recognized it instantly. The opening riff from the cassette. The creature spoke in a voice that was half static, half melody. "Return the source." Daniel raised the mining cutter. "Not happening." The leader tilted its head. "You cannot keep it. You cannot fight what is already inside you." The guitar swelled again, shaking the air. Daniel's heartbeat sped up. Leora's fingers twitched around her blade. Without warning, she stepped forward. "If you want it," she said, her voice low and dangerous, "you'll have to take it from me." Before Daniel could stop her, she lunged. She moved like the music was inside her bones. Every slash of her blade hit in perfect time with the drums. Every twist and dodge following the rhythm as if she had trained for it her entire life. The first intruder fell in seconds, its limbs severed in a blur. Daniel fired the mining cutter, burning through another, but he couldn't match her speed. It was like she wasn't just fighting to the song, she was fighting as the song. And that scared him. The leader advanced through the chaos, ignoring the fallen. It reached for Daniel, long fingers curling like hooks. The closer it got, the more Daniel felt the music pounding directly in his skull. His vision blurred, and the deck seemed to tilt under him. Then Liara was there. Between him and the creature, her blade locking against its arm. Sparks showered as they pushed against each other. The leader's voice hissed into the air. "You carry the fire, but she is becoming it." Daniel felt a cold knot in his chest. Liar don't listen to it, but she didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the leader's faceless head, her teeth bared in something that wasn't quite a smile. The fight broke apart when Daniel slammed the mining cutter into the floor and fired. The molten burst tore a glowing scar through the deck, forcing the leader to retreat. The other intruders faltered for just a second, enough for Daniel to grab Liara's arm and pull her toward the core. Access hatch. She resisted for half a heartbeat, then followed. The hatch sealed behind them, cutting off the sound of the fight, but not the music. It was louder in here. The core chamber was a vast cylinder, glowing with the blue-white light of the station's reactor coils. Thick conduits snaked along the walls, humming with energy. And at the center, suspended in a web of cables, was something Daniel had never seen before. It wasn't part of the station's schematics. A spherical device floated just above the reactor's heart, rotating slowly. Its surface was alive with shifting light patterns, and every flicker matched the beat of the song. Liara stepped closer, almost in a trance. "This is the heart." Daniel grabbed her shoulder. "That's not ours. It's controlling everything." She turned her head toward him, her eyes brighter than ever. "Or maybe it's freeing me." Before he could answer, the hatch behind them shuddered. The intruders were cutting through. Sparks rained from the door, the metal glowing red where their claws dug in. Daniel looked at the sphere, then at Liara. "If we destroy it, the music stops. Maybe they stop too." Her lips parted, and for the first time since the docking arm, her voice softened. "And if you destroy it, maybe I stop too." Daniel froze. The pounding of the song filled the space between them, and the hatch tore open. The hatch exploded inward, sending shards of molten metal across the core chamber floor. The black-plated intruders poured through, their movements perfectly in time with the music. The pounding drums matched their footfalls. The soaring guitar, slicing through the reactor's hum. Daniel raised the mining cutter, but his eyes kept flicking between them and the sphere at the reactor's heart. Every flicker of light across its surface seemed to reach into him, sinking his pulse, controlling his breath. Liara stood between him and the sphere, her blade catching the reactor's glow. She wasn't looking at the intruders, she was looking at him. "They're here for you, Daniel," she said, her voice calm, almost serene. "Because you still think this is something you can fight." Daniel tightened his grip on the cutter. "If I destroy it, this all ends." Her eyes burned brighter. "If you destroy it, you destroy me." The intruders closed in. Liara didn't move to stop them. She stepped aside, letting the leader walk directly toward Daniel. Its chest display pulsed with the waveform of the song, the peaks rising higher, sharper with each step. "You cannot kill the beat," the leader said. "It is older than you, stronger than you, and now it has found a voice in her." Daniel felt the pressure in his skull deepen. The song wasn't just sound anymore. It was inside him, pushing thoughts out, replacing them with rhythm, and Liara. She looked like she belonged to it. The first intruder lunged. Daniel fired, the mining cutter's beam tearing a molten gash through its torso. It fell, twitching, but the others didn't slow. Liara moved then, but not to protect Daniel. wove through the intruders like the music was her weapon, every strike of her blade perfectly on the beat. The black-plated bodies fell in pieces, sparks raining to the deck. She was winning, but she was lost. Daniel backed toward the sphere. The heat from the reactor was intense, sweat rolling down his neck. The cassette player in his pocket rattled faintly, as if it wanted out. The leader noticed. It broke from the fight, sprinting toward him in a blur of motion. Daniel barely dodged the first strike, the metal claws slicing the air where his head had been. "You hold the seed," it hissed, "but she is the tree. Cut her, and you cut yourself." Daniel swung the cutter, the beam scorching across its chest. It staggered, but didn't fall. Liara dispatched the last of the smaller intruders and turned to him. Her breathing was heavy, her violet eyes glowing like embers. "Daniel," she said, stepping closer, "you can't fight it. Let it in." He shook his head. "I've seen what it does." Her expression softened, almost pleading. "You've seen what it could do. It could make us unstoppable. No one could stand against us. Not here, not anywhere." For a second, the image flashed in his mind, fleets falling, worlds trembling, the two of them standing above it all with the song roaring around them. Then he saw the crew in the observation bay, swaying mindlessly, and he knew. The leader lunged again. Daniel sidestepped, driving the mining cutter into its chest and holding the trigger. The beam burned deep, molten metal spilling across the deck. The leader convulsed, its voice warping into a final broken note before it collapsed. The sphere reacted instantly. Its light patterns spasmed, the beat faltering for the first time. Liara gasped, clutching her head. "Daniel!" she shouted, her voice sharp, pained. He stepped toward the sphere. Lifting the cutter, she moved faster than he'd ever seen. One second she was across the room. The next, her blade was at his throat. "Don't," she said, her voice trembling. "If you destroy it, I lose this. I lose me." Daniel met her eyes. "And if I don't, you lose you." The music roared back, faster now, almost frantic. The intruders outside pounded against the sealed hatch, the sound merging with the drums. The sphere's glow grew brighter, bathing them both in its light. Daniel's thumb tightened on the cutter's trigger. Lyra's expression broke a flash of fear. Or maybe something deeper. "Daniel, please." For a split second, he hesitated. Then the hatch behind them buckled. They had seconds before the next wave came through. Seconds to choose. Daniel raised the cutter high and brought it down. The sphere screamed, not with sound, but with a burst of light that shattered across the chamber. The music cut out mid-beat, leaving only the reactor's hum and the ringing in Daniel's ears. Liara collapsed, the glow in her eyes fading instantly. The pounding at the hatch stopped, and in the sudden silence, Daniel realized the cassette in his pocket was still warm. The silence after the destruction of the sphere was almost unbearable. No guitar, no drums, no hum from the walls. Just the reactor's steady throb and the faint hiss of cooling metal. Daniel dropped the mining cutter, its barrel still glowing from the final strike. His arms felt heavy, her heartbeat still racing in the ghost of the song's rhythm. Liara lay on the deck where she had fallen. Her blade was a few feet away, its edge dull in the reactor's pale light. Daniel knelt beside her, checking her pulse. It was fast, too fast, but steady. Her eyes fluttered open. "It's quiet," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's over." But the words didn't feel true. She pushed herself up, wincing. "The silence feels wrong." Daniel studied her face. The glow in her eyes was gone, replaced by their natural violet sheen. But there was something else. A faint flicker, like the memory of light deep inside. "You're free now," he said. trying to sound certain. Her gaze dropped to his jacket pocket. "No, I'm not." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" She reached out, her fingers brushing the outline. "Of the cassette player?" Even through the fabric, he felt it. The faint warmth still there. "The song is not gone, Daniel," she said quietly. "You broke its cage, but you didn't kill it." The sound of metal shifting echoed from the corridor outside. Daniel grabbed the cutter instinctively, but no intruders came. Instead, the station's lights flickered once, then steadied. Systems rebooting. Life support stabilizing. Liara stood slowly, her balance still unsteady. She walked to the shattered remains of the sphere, crouching to study the fragments. The etched waveforms on its surface still pulsed faintly, as if the beat was trapped inside them, waiting. "It's part of you now," she said, without looking up. "Part of me too." Daniel didn't like the way she said it, like it wasn't a curse, but a promise. They made their way out of the core chamber. The halls were littered with the fallen intruders, their bodies cold and inert. Without the music, they were nothing more than dead machines. But as they passed one, Daniel swore he saw its fingers twitch just once, in perfect time, with a beat that wasn't there. He didn't mention it. In the docking arm, they stared out at the gas giant's swirling clouds. Lightning flashed deep within the storms, silent through the vacuum. Somewhere out there, in the black, pieces of the destroyed sphere drifted into nothing. Liara rested her hand on the glass. "On my world, we were taught that sound is life, that without rhythm there is no meaning. Now I know they were right and wrong." Daniel crossed his arms. "The wrong part being that some rhythms can kill." She smiled faintly. "Or change everything." They returned to the lounge where it all began. The cassette player sat on the table, the old tape still inside. Daniel looked at it for a long time. "We should destroy it," he said finally. Liara tilted her head. "Will you?" He didn't answer right away. His fingers hovered over the eject button. If he pressed play, the song would return pure, untainted. The same sound that had once just been music. But now, it was something else. Liara stepped closer, her voice soft. "You know as well as I do. You're not done with it." Daniel looked at her, at the faint shimmer still under her skin, the way her pulse seemed to move in a rhythm too precise to be natural. She was right. Whatever had happened in the core hadn't broken the connection. It had just changed. Maybe not," he admitted, "but I'm not letting it own us." She smiled, and for a moment it was almost warm. "Then we own it." Outside, the station drifted in silence, but somewhere deep in its metal bones, too faint for any sensor to detect, a beat began again. Slow, waiting. Daniel heard it. Liara heard it. And both of them knew, when it came back in full, they'd be red. For the next 6 hours, the station felt dead. No hum in the walls, no hidden rhythm in the lights, no faint pulse in the air. Daniel and Liara worked in near silence, sealing breaches, dragging the motionless intruders to an empty cargo hold, and running system checks from the bridge. Every time Daniel passed the lounge, his eyes drifted to the table where the cassette player sat. It hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, but he still felt it watching him. Liara seemed different. The glow in her eyes had faded almost completely, yet her movements still carried a precision that made Daniel uneasy. When she walked, it was as though her body was keeping time with something only she could hear. He caught her standing at a viewport once, staring out into the void, her fingers tapping faintly against the glass. For beats, a pause, then 4. Again. "You're still hearing it, aren't you?" he asked. She didn't turn. Not hearing, feeling. Later in the mess hall, Daniel tried to eat, but the quiet was heavy. Every clink of cutlery, every hum from the air recycler felt like it might turn into the song at any second. His nerves were frayed. Liara sat across from him, sipping something from a steaming cup. You destroyed the sphere, but you didn't destroy the source. That kind of rhythm doesn't live in machines. It finds hosts. Daniel set his fork down. You think it's inside us. She gave him a long, unreadable look. I know it is. Before he could reply, the station shuddered. Not from an impact, it was subtler, more like the deep. Slow roll of bass through the floor. Daniel stood instantly. Tell me you felt that. Leora's expression didn't change. I felt it, and it's closer this time. They moved quickly to the nearest control terminal. Daniel pulled up external scans, expecting to see ships, debris, something. There was nothing, only the station, and the faintest irregular distortion in the vacuum around it. The distortion began to pulse. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't need instruments to know the truth. The beat was back, not the raw, defiant human rock riff from before, but something deeper, slower, heavier. Leora's pupils dilated, learning. The pulse grew stronger. One by one, the lights along the ceiling flickered in time with it. The air recycler's steady hums shifted pitch to match. The whole station was starting to join in. They ran for the cargo hold. The black-plated intruders lay where they had dumped them earlier, twisted, silent wrecks. But as Daniel approached, one moved. Its head lifted slowly, turning toward him. The flat, eyeless surface on its face vibrated once, and then it breathed out the opening note of the song. The others stirred in unison. Some twitched, some sat upright. All of them hummed. Together, their voices merging into a single low drone that followed the new beat. Liara stepped closer, unafraid. They're not here to fight anymore, she said. They're here to spread it. Daniel grabbed her arm. We can't let them get off this station. She didn't resist his grip. Then we don't let the station go anywhere. He frowned. You're suggesting? Her eyes met his. We kill it. Everything. The ship, the systems, the metal. No network, no core. Just cold, empty drift. Daniel's jaw tightened. That would mean abandoning the station completely, destroying months of work and any chance of salvaging it. But if they didn't, the song might travel farther than either of them could follow. The intruders began to stand. Their movements weren't fast or aggressive now. They were deliberate, almost ceremonial, like performers stepping onto a stage. The drone in their voices rose into the shape of a melody. Daniel pulled the cassette player from his jacket. It was warm again. Lyra's gaze dropped to it. That's your link. Smash it, and maybe a sound cut her off sharp, metallic, echoing from outside the cargo hold. Footsteps, human ones, Daniel and Liara, turned toward the door as it slid open. A man in a tattered mining uniform stepped inside, his eyes glassy, his lips curling into a smile that wasn't his own. The beat found me, he said in a voice that carried more than one tone, and it's going to find all of you. The intruders behind them started walking toward him like soldiers returning to a commander, and for the first time, Daniel realized the song didn't need machines to survive anymore. It had people. The man in the mining uniform stood just inside the cargo hold, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, his glassy eyes fixed on Daniel. Behind him, more footsteps echoed down the corridor, uneven, stumbling, yet perfectly matching the deep. Slow beat, now pulsing through the station's metal bones. Liara moved instinctively to put herself between Daniel and the intruders, her blade ready. These are not like the others, she murmured. They're alive, and that makes them worse. Daniel gripped the mining cutter. How many? Her eyes flicked to the door. Too many. The miner smiled faintly, but his voice was layered. Warped Daniel could hear two, maybe three different tones in it. You think you stopped it, but the song doesn't need the sphere. It doesn't even need the machines. It lives in us now. The black-plated intruders in the hold shifted, turning toward him like obedient soldiers. Their smooth faces vibrated, faintly matching the cadence of his voice. You will hear it, the miner continued, and you will join it. Daniel stepped forward. I've already heard it. I'm still here. The miner's smile widened. For now, Liara lunged. First, her blade flashed in the cold light, slicing the air where the miner's neck had been, but he moved too quickly. Twisting away in a motion that wasn't quite human, he didn't counterattack. He just kept stepping closer, speaking in that multi-toned voice. And with every word, Daniel felt the rhythm crawling back into his bones. The other footsteps were closer now. Figures emerged in the doorway. Station crew Daniel knew by name. Engineers, traders, even the security chief. All of them moved like marionettes, their eyes dull, their lips forming silent words in time with the song only they could hear. Liara hissed under her breath. They all start singing, we're finished. Daniel knew she was right. The music was stronger when it had more voices, and if the whole crew joined in, the song might never stop. He glanced at the cassette player. In his jacket, destroying it might sever his own link, but it might also kill their only weapon against the rhythm. The miner saw the look. His smile vanished. You wouldn't dare. Daniel drew it out slowly, the old plastic case warm against his palm. I will if I have to. Lyra's voice was sharp. Daniel, think. If you destroy it, the song in you will have no anchor. It will spread faster. His hand froze. The crew in the doorway began to hum. It was low at first, barely more than a whisper, but it grew, blending with the deep bass in the walls. The air seemed to vibrate, rattling the cargo containers. Lyra staggered, pressing a hand to her temple. It's pulling at me. Daniel's knees felt weak. The beat was in his blood again, his heart sinking without permission. The miner took another step forward. Let go, Daniel. Feel what she feels. No more fear. No more fight. Just the music. For a moment, Daniel did feel it the way Liara must have when she first heard the song. The power, the clarity, the sense that nothing outside the rhythm mattered. But then he remembered the bodies in the observation bay, the vacant eyes, the swaying forms. No, he said, his voice low, not like this. He thumbed the cassette player's rewind button. The piercing tone shrieked into the air, cutting through the hum like a blade. The miner staggered back. The crew clutched, their heads, their voices breaking apart. The intruders froze mid-step, their movements jerking out of sync. Liara gritted her teeth and forced herself upright. Don't stop, Daniel. He kept the tone going, stepping forward until the miner was almost against the wall. The man's smile twisted into a snarl. You can't hold it forever. And when it comes back, Daniel shut the player off. I'll be ready. The crew in the doorway collapsed to the floor, breathing but unconscious. The intruders in the cargo hold slumped back into silence, but the beat in the walls didn't stop. It was faint now, distant but still there. Waiting, Liara stepped. Up beside him, her voice quiet. It's retreating, but it's not gone. Daniel nodded. Which means it's choosing where to hit next. They both looked toward the viewport at the far end of the hall, beyond the drifting station in the shadow of the gas giant. Tiny lights flickered in the black. Ships, at least a dozen of them. And Daniel knew without a doubt they were coming because they'd heard the song. The lights in the black were getting closer. Ships, not warships, not traders, but vessels Daniel didn't recognize. They moved in perfect formation, gliding toward the station with unnerving precision. Every few seconds, their running lights blinked in unison, matching the beat still pulsing faintly through the station's walls. Lyra's jaw tightened. They're already part of it. Daniel set the cassette player on the console in front of him. Then they're bringing the rest of it here. The station's defense grid was barely functional. 2 aging turrets and a shield generator that flickered on good days. They couldn't fight a dozen ships with that. Liara stepped closer to the viewport, her reflection faint in the glass. You still have one weapon, the song itself. Daniel glanced at her. Last time I used it, it nearly took you with it. She met his eyes, unflinching. This time, let it. If I can take more of it into me, I can draw them away from the station. He shook his head. That's suicide. Her faint smile was sharper than it should have been. Not if you kill me before it finishes. The beat in the walls grew stronger as the ships drew near. Systems across the station began to hum and flicker again, lights pulsing to the rhythm. Daniel could feel it slipping into his own heartbeat, making his fingers twitch against the console. On the scanners, the ship split into 2 groups, one moving toward the docking arms, the other toward the reactor core. They're going for the heart, Daniel muttered. Liara turned from the glass. Then so do we. They ran through the corridors, the sound chasing them like a living thing. By the time they reached the core chamber, the glow from the reactor coils was already shifting. No longer this steady blue-white, but pulsing in reds and golds, as if the very energy of the station was becoming part of the music again, floating. Above the reactor's heart, where the shattered sphere had been, was something new, smaller, darker. Its surface shimmered like oil, and it pulsed in time with the beat. Liara stopped dead. It rebuilt itself. Daniel felt his stomach drop. No, something else rebuilt it. Before they could move, the new sphere flared, and the black-plated intruders began climbing out of the floor panels. Not from storage or corridors, but from the station's own walls. They were leaner, faster, and already moving to block every exit. Liara's voice was steady. It's not giving us a second chance. We end it here. Daniel lifted the cassette player. Then let's make it choke on its own song. He slammed the play button. The first raw, unfiltered guitar riff from the original 80s rock track ripped. Through the chamber, the intruders faltered instantly, their movements jerking out of sync. The sphere pulsed faster, its surface rippling as if in pain. Liara surged forward, her blade flashing in time with the music, cutting down anything in her path. Daniel held the player high, turning the volume to its maximum, every beat hitting harder through the chorus metal. The intruders fell one by one, but the sphere didn't weaken. It fed on the sound, glowing brighter. Daniel, Liara shouted over the roar. It's using your song to anchor itself. You have to overload it. He understood instantly. Rewind, not just a tone, the piercing, destructive screech he'd used before, pushed to full power. Daniel slammed the button. The high-pitched tone tore through the chamber, cutting into the sphere's rhythm. The glow faltered. The beat stuttered. Lyra leaped, driving her blade deep into its surface. The sphere let out a sound like 100 voices screaming at once. The core flared white, light flooding the chamber. The intruders froze mid-strike, their bodies dissolving into black dust that scattered across the deck. Liara staggered, dropping to one knee, her blade clattering to the floor. Daniel caught her before she fell. Stay with me. Her eyes flickered once, the faint glow returning. It's still in me. The light in the core faded back to steady blue-white. The beat was gone. For now. Hours later, the station drifted in silence once more. The ships that had been closing in were gone, scattering back into the void as if called elsewhere. Daniel sat in the lounge, the cassette player on the table in front of him. It was cold now, still, Liara stepped in quietly. Her movements were... But when Daniel looked into her eyes, he thought he saw something, a rhythm. Faint, patient, waiting. You kept it, she said. He nodded. Destroying it doesn't destroy the song. Better I keep it where I can watch it. Her smile was small, but it didn't reach her eyes, or where it can watch you. Outside the viewport, the stars were silent. But somewhere deep in the station's metal, so faint it could be mistaken for imagination, a beat began again, slow, waiting, and both of them heard it.